I still remember the morning when everything inside me quietly broke, not with a scream or anger, but with a gentle silence that felt heavier than any storm. It was the day my older brother Rahim looked straight into my eyes and called me useless. Even now, when I close my eyes, I can still see the way his face looked when he said it, not angry, not emotional, just cold and certain, as if he was stating a simple fact that everyone already knew. The strange thing is, I did not argue with him. I did not defend myself. I simply stood there, holding the old leather file that contained the company reports I had worked on all night, and I smiled, even though my chest felt tight. From the outside, it may have looked like nothing, just two brothers talking in a hallway, but inside, something deep shifted, like a light that had been flickering for years finally going out. Our company was my father's dream, and when he passed away, the responsibility fell on both of us. Rahim, as the elder brother, naturally took most of the leadership roles, while I quietly handled the background work, reports, analysis, client calls, and anything else that needed attention but never earned recognition. I never complained, maybe because I always felt like I was still trying to prove myself worthy, still trying to show him that I belonged. But over time, my efforts seemed invisible. If a client praised the company, he said it was because of his connections. If a new idea worked well, he said it was because he approved it. And if something failed, even slightly, it somehow became my fault. I kept telling myself that brothers should stay united, that family should stay together, especially after losing our parents. I believed that if I kept working harder, someday he would see my worth, but that morning made me question everything. It happened in the boardroom hallway, just before an important meeting with the shareholders. I had spent the entire night preparing a proposal for a new branch that could bring in strong revenue. I felt hopeful, maybe even proud. When I showed the proposal to him, he barely glanced at it before handing it back. "You don't understand how things work," he said softly at first, almost like advice from an elder. "You are good at small tasks. Leave the real decisions to me." His voice felt like ice. I swallowed my disappointment and tried to explain that the numbers were solid, that the plan could genuinely bring good outcomes for the company. That was when he stopped walking, turned fully toward me, and said the words that would follow me for months. "You are useless, Arif. You only make things harder. Stay out of the way." He did not raise his voice. He did not look angry. He simply said it as if it were the truth. For a moment, I could not breathe. The hallway suddenly felt too long, too empty, too bright. I looked down at the papers in my hand and the numbers blurred. I wondered if he had always felt this way. I wondered if maybe he was right. But instead of crying or fighting back, I felt a surprising calm settle over me, like the gentle quiet after heavy rain. I managed to whisper, "Okay, bye," and walked away. I went to the small room at the end of the corridor, the one no one used. I sat there with my file on my lap, and I listened to the sounds of footsteps, conversations, and the faint echo of the meeting starting without me. I felt like a stranger in the company I had dedicated my life to. Yet even in that moment of sadness, I felt something unexpected inside me: clarity. Not anger, not revenge, just the slow realization that maybe I had been waiting too long for someone else to validate my worth. Maybe it was time for me to stand for myself quietly, without shouting, without blaming, without bitterness. I did not want to hurt my brother. I only wanted to be seen. I wanted to contribute. I wanted to matter. Sitting alone in that silent room, I thought about all the nights I stayed awake working, all the sacrifices I made, all the dreams I put aside because I believed family should come first. I thought about how many times I told myself that things would get better, and I realized that maybe things would not get better unless I changed something inside myself. When the meeting ended, I heard the door open and close from the boardroom. There were cheerful voices, light footsteps, and a few laughs. I stayed in the small room until they all left. When I finally came out, the hallway was empty again. My brother walked past me without a glance, too busy on his phone to notice the quiet pain on my face. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and stared at the screen. My heart felt heavy, but something new had awakened in me, a calm determination. I did not know then how everything would unfold, how one simple sentence from my brother would lead to the biggest turning point of my life, how the same board that ignored me would one day call my name in a way I never expected. All I knew was that a chapter of my life had quietly ended in that hallway, and another chapter, though still invisible, had quietly begun. And even though I felt small and unseen at that moment, something deep inside whispered that one day, I would rise. Not to defeat my brother, not to prove him wrong, but to finally prove to myself that I had always been enough. I still remember the morning when things quietly began to change, though at that time, I did not realize how deeply those small moments would shape my heart. It was early winter, the kind of cold that made the windows fog and the house feel strangely silent. I walked into the kitchen hopping to make tea for everyone, something I always did out of habit. something that made me feel useful in a home that often reminded me I was not. My mother looked at me with a soft smile, but my brother barely lifted his eyes from his phone. He had been distant for months, and I kept thinking maybe he was stressed, maybe he was tired, maybe I had done something unknowingly. But the truth was simpler. His success made him proud, and my slow progress made me invisible. That morning, when I placed a cup of tea beside him, he pushed it away gently and said, "I have no time for this. You should focus on finding a real job instead of walking around the house." His tone was calm, but his words sank into me like cold water. I tried to smile because that was the only way I knew to protect myself. I never wanted to argue. I never wanted to disturb the peace of the house. But deep inside, something began to tighten, something small but sharp. I wondered if I really was useless, if the person closest to me had already decided my worth without even asking about my struggles. Later that day, when we sat together in the living room, he spoke again, not unkindly, but in a way that made everyone glance at me with quiet sympathy. He said, "In this world, only capable people rise. Some people stay stuck because they don't have the drive." His eyes met mine for a second, and then he looked away. The silence around me felt heavy, almost pressing against my chest. I wanted to explain that I was trying. I wanted to say that building something meaningful takes time, patience, and mistakes. But the words stayed trapped inside me. My father cleared his throat softly and tried to change the topic, speaking about the weather, the market, the neighbor's new house. But the weight of my brother's words hung in the room like dust that would never settle. In the days that followed, small things began to pile up. Simple comments, gentle reminders, quiet sighs. My brother would talk loudly about his achievements, his meetings, his plans, and he would often say, "Some people just watch life pass by," while glancing at me. It wasn't loud humiliation. It wasn't open cruelty. It was the soft kind that seeps under the skin and stays there. One day I overheard him talking to a friend on the phone. He laughed and said, "My sibling? Oh, he's harmless. He just dreams a lot." That one sentence stayed with me through the night. It echoed in the walls of my mind until it became almost unbearable. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if my dreams really were useless. I wanted to believe in myself, but every time I tried, his voice pushed me down again. Around this time, I had been working quietly on an idea, something I never spoke about to anyone because it was still fragile, still forming. I was studying market patterns, researching companies, reading financial reports late into the night. I was trying to build something slowly, patiently. But because no one saw results yet, it was easy for them to believe I was doing nothing at all. One evening, while I sat at the dining table with my laptop open, my brother walked by and said, still pretending to be busy. He didn't laugh. He didn't sound angry. He sounded tired of me, as if my existence itself was inconvenient. My mother looked at him, then at me, with quiet worry in her eyes. She asked me softly, "Are you okay?" I nodded because I didn't want her to feel the weight I was carrying. I didn't want her to think she had failed as a mother. But after she walked away, something inside me cracked just a little. I closed the laptop slowly, not because I wanted to quit, but because for the first time, the pain was louder than my hope. I went to my room and sat alone in the dim light, listening to the faint sounds of the house, kitchen utensils, the soft hum of the television, footsteps in the hallway. I felt like a shadow in my own home. I whispered to myself, maybe they're right, maybe I'm not enough. And yet, even in that quiet moment of doubt, something very small but very firm began to rise inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't pride. It was a gentle promise to myself. A promise that I would continue, quietly and steadily, even if no one believed in me yet. I didn't know how long it would take. I didn't know if success would ever come. But I knew one thing: I could not give up on myself just because others had given up on me. That night, I opened my laptop again. I wiped my tears and continued studying. Line by line, page by page. Quietly, like a seed growing under the soil where no one can see it yet. And even though my brother's words hurt, they also became a quiet fuel inside me, pushing me to rise one day, not for revenge, but to prove to myself that I was not as small as he believed. I did not know that the day he would learn this truth was closer than I thought. It happened on a quiet Thursday morning, the kind of morning when sunlight filters gently through the blinds and the world seems soft, almost forgiving, and I was sitting in my small office, reviewing company reports, when I received a call from one of the board members, Mr. Karim, someone I had worked with quietly for years but never spoken to about my ambitions. His voice was calm, polite, yet carried a weight I could not ignore. "Arif," he said, "we would like to see you in the boardroom today. It's important." I paused for a moment, my heart beating quietly but firmly, wondering what could have possibly prompted this sudden attention. My brother, Rahim, had no idea I had been building relationships quietly behind the scenes, earning respect, proving myself through small but meaningful achievements that no one outside the inner workings of the company would ever notice. I walked to the boardroom slowly, carrying only my notes and a sense of quiet determination. The room was empty when I arrived, save for Mr. Karim and a few senior advisors. "Have a seat," he said. His eyes met mine, not with judgment but with respect. "We've been reviewing the company's performance and the board feels it's time for some changes." My mind raced, yet I kept my voice steady. "Changes?" I asked softly. He nodded. "Yes, leadership has been imbalanced. The board wants to vote on a new chairman, and your name has come up repeatedly. They want someone who understands the company deeply and works tirelessly, even if quietly. They believe that person is you." I felt a strange calm wash over me, almost surreal. It was as if years of invisibility, years of being told I was useless, were finally reaching a tipping point where the world could see what I had built in silence. I remembered my brother's words, the countless times he had dismissed me, and for a moment a quiet ache rose in my chest. But it wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I had never wanted to humiliate him. I had only wanted to matter. And now, in this small boardroom filled with familiar faces, my quiet diligence had spoken louder than any words ever could. The vote was held immediately, with Mr. Karim calling each member individually. I listened as names were mentioned, the tension gentle but present, until finally mine was confirmed unanimously. I was the new chairman. For a second, everything froze. The room felt brighter, lighter, and I realized that my brother, who had always measured me by what he could see, would soon learn the truth in the quietest, most undeniable way. A few hours later, Rahim walked into the boardroom, expecting to take his usual place at the head of the table, only to see me seated there, documents neatly organized, a calm expression on my face. His face went pale, his mouth slightly open, and he did not speak for a long moment. I looked at him gently and said, "The board has decided." He swallowed hard, finally finding his voice, though it trembled softly. "Arif, I didn't see this coming." I nodded, keeping my tone calm and steady, letting the quiet strength in my presence speak more than any words could. "I've been working quietly for years," I said softly. "Not for recognition, not for approval, but to ensure the company thrives. Today the board feels I am ready to lead." He looked down at his hands, then back at me, and for the first time I saw something I had never seen before: respect, mixed with a soft touch of shame. It was not humiliating him. It was simply letting life reveal the truth. Over the next few weeks, things shifted in subtle but meaningful ways. Rahim no longer dismissed me in conversations with clients or employees. He spoke to me with care, consulting me before making decisions, listening to my advice. I did not hold the past against him. I simply allowed the quiet proof of my work to reshape the relationship, to show him that diligence, patience, and integrity always have their place. I also noticed a strange sense of relief among the staff. They had always respected my work quietly, even when Rahim claimed credit. Now, seeing the recognition finally granted, there was a sense of calm, almost celebration, in the office, not loud, not ostentatious, but deeply felt. And then came the moment I had anticipated quietly, not with bitterness, but with calm reflection. The day I walked into the family dining room to inform Rahim's parents. They looked at me with surprise, then curiosity, and finally with the realization that their older son had misjudged me all along. His mother's eyes softened, and she said, "Arif, we didn't know you were capable of so much." I smiled gently, the kind of smile that carries no malice, only quiet pride. "I've always been capable," I said softly. "I just never needed to prove it to anyone who wouldn't listen." His father nodded slowly, and in that moment I felt a calm closure. The kind that comes when truth unfolds gently, without anger, without confrontation, only with the quiet patience of life itself. I learned something invaluable during that time, that humiliation can be painful, but patience and steady work are more powerful than loud words or immediate recognition. Success does not always announce itself with fanfare. Sometimes it arrives quietly, without warning, and it teaches those who doubted to finally see what they could not before. Even Rahim in time approached me quietly, his voice soft, his tone filled with humility. "I underestimated you," he said. I placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's all right. We all learn eventually. What matters is the work, the dedication, and the integrity we carry." That evening, as I sat in my new office, overlooking the city through large glass windows, I allowed myself a small moment to breathe and reflect. The pain of the past still lingered faintly, but it had softened, replaced by a gentle warmth that came from proving to myself, more than anyone else, that I could rise quietly, steadily, and with grace. And as the sun set behind the skyline, casting a soft golden glow across the desk where I now sat as chairman, I realized that sometimes the greatest victories are the ones that arrive quietly, not with loud triumph, but with the calm, undeniable proof that patience, perseverance, and self-belief can overcome even the deepest humiliation. After being appointed as the new chairman, life felt strange yet gentle, like stepping into a room I had always belonged in, but had never been allowed to enter before. The office was quiet, the hum of computers and faint footsteps of employees filling the space with soft energy, and I sat behind the large wooden desk, still letting the reality of the day settle into my mind. Rahim avoided the office for a few days, probably needing time to adjust to the idea that the younger, overlooked sibling was now leading the company. I did not rush him. I did not gloat. I simply continued my work, reviewing reports, signing papers, attending meetings, and quietly showing everyone, including my brother, that leadership was more than a title. It was patience, calm, and careful decision-making. Slowly, Rahim began to appear more often, asking questions, offering suggestions, but now in a tone of respect rather than dismissal. I listened, nodded, and sometimes explained why certain decisions were made, always keeping my voice gentle and measured. I wanted him to understand that the past was not about revenge, but about recognition and growth. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Rahim stayed behind longer than usual. He walked quietly to my desk, hands tucked in his pockets, and said softly, "Arif, I've been thinking a lot. I treated you unfairly. I called you useless when all this time you were working harder than I ever realized." I looked up from the papers, meeting his eyes. I did not smile in triumph. I only said gently, "It's all right. We all see differently sometimes. What matters is what we do with that understanding now." His eyes reflected a mixture of humility and regret. For a moment, we simply stood in silence, the soft glow of the desk lamp illuminating the calm in the office. That night, I returned home to our small family house, where my parents used to sit quietly during dinner. Now, Rahim's parents had come to visit, having learned of the change quietly through mutual friends. I had invited them without ceremony, only because I wanted them to see the truth firsthand, not to prove anything, but so they could finally witness what had been invisible to them all along. My brother's mother looked at me with soft, almost apologetic eyes. "Arif, we had no idea we misjudged you," she whispered, her voice carrying warmth and quiet regret. I smiled gently. "I've never wanted anyone's approval through words. What matters is integrity, hard work, and patience. That is what shapes respect." His father nodded slowly, his hands folded in front of him. "It took time, but now we understand. You have always had the capability, and your dedication proves it." That evening, we spoke quietly over a simple meal, sharing stories, laughter, and reflections on the past. The atmosphere was calm, tender, and filled with understanding rather than judgment. I realized in that moment that respect does not need confrontation. It simply needs truth, time, and patience. My brother remained quiet for a while, then reached for my hand and said softly, "I've learned a lesson. I should never underestimate anyone, especially family. I see now what you've carried all these years." I placed my hand over his, the weight of the past softening between us. "We all learn, Rahim. Life teaches in its own way. Today is proof that patience, effort, and quiet dedication always matter." Weeks passed, and the company began to thrive under the new leadership. I introduced small, meaningful changes, always consulting with the team, listening, observing, guiding gently rather than dominating. Employees noticed the calm authority I carried, and slowly, even clients began to recognize the difference. The quiet diligence I had practiced for years finally had room to breathe, and it became visible in ways no one could ignore. One afternoon, during a board meeting, Rahim spoke up, this time with confidence and respect. "Arif, I want to thank you for leading with such care. I've learned more from you in these weeks than in all the years before." I nodded, feeling a gentle pride, not from winning, but from seeing growth and understanding in the people around me. That evening when I returned home, I found a small letter slipped under my door. It was from my parents, written in their careful, loving handwriting. They expressed pride, humility, and joy in seeing how far I had come, not in wealth or title, but in character, in strength. In the quiet way I had earned recognition without losing kindness. I held the letter close, feeling warmth rise gently in my chest. Over the next few months, I watched life settle into a new rhythm. Rahim became a partner in a different capacity, learning from me quietly, supporting the company with dedication, but never again dismissing my efforts. My family began to see me differently, not because I shouted my achievements or demanded respect, but because I let life and truth reveal themselves. One day, as I walked through the office, employees stopped to smile, clients greeted me warmly, and even the board members showed quiet admiration. I paused for a moment, taking it all in, and realized that humiliation, though painful, can be transformed into strength when one does not give up. I thought about the years I spent feeling invisible, feeling useless, feeling small, And I understood that those feelings, while heavy, had been necessary for me to grow, to build resilience, and to learn patience. One quiet evening, I sat by the window, looking at the city lights reflecting in the river. Rahim came and sat beside me, our shoulders touching gently. Arif, he said softly, I know I can never take back what I said, but I want you to know I see you now, truly. I smiled, placing my hand over his. It's okay. What matters is today and tomorrow. We have learned, we have grown, that is enough. I leaned back, letting the soft glow of the city lights fill my mind, feeling calm, whole, and at peace. And in that gentle quiet, I whispered to myself, life has a way of revealing truth, not through anger, not through revenge, but through steady work, patience, and quiet strength. Those who doubt you will eventually see what they could not before. And in that realization lies the deepest kind of peace. The story of being called useless had ended not with confrontation, not with loud triumph, but with quiet victory, proof that resilience, integrity, and patience always outshine judgment, and that true success is measured by the calm confidence of standing tall when no one believed you could. And as I closed my eyes that night, wrapped in quiet reflection, I felt gratitude for the struggle, for the lessons, and for the gentle power of life that allows us to rise, slowly but surely, into the place we were always meant to occupy.